Hello, VueConf. Let's talk about the first 5 years of Vite. From the first prototype to becoming the shared infrastructure layer of most modern frameworks. First, I want to deeply thank the organizers and the community. I'm very sorry I couldn't make it in person, and I hope you're going to have an amazing conference today. I'm Matias Capeletto, but you may know me as Patak, and he's Zorro, one of our 3 cats. I'm a Vite core team member, and I work on open source at Bolt, focusing on the Vite ecosystem. Someone told me I should start my talks explaining what is Vite, even if I think everybody uses it and know how it works. But let's go quickly through the translated Vite docs to do a shout out to the Chinese translation team for all their works. Vite makes web development fun again. It has instant server start, lightning fast hot module replacement, out-of-the-box support for most common web needs, all with a heavily optimized build. Vite is a breeze to use. But Vite is more than that. It is a shared layer to build upon. It has a flexible plugin system based on rollup plugin interface, a fully typed API, first-class SSR support, and stability as a feature through ecosystem CI. Vite is a framework author best friend, and its internal are improving while keeping a stable API for everyone. And they will soon improve way more. But let's get back. 5 years ago, when Vite didn't yet existed. At that point, Webpack was the king of front-end build tools. Rollup was heavily used by library authors, but lacked a good story for app development. New native-based bundlers with a focus on speed instead of flexibility were starting to appear. SWC in Rust and ESBuild in Go. Here is the start of our story. Evan was going to bed and had an idea for an unbundled dev setup with proper HMR for Vue single-file components. He didn't sleep at all that night, and the next day got the Vite repository in GitHub. Evan combined the maturity of Rollup with the speed of ESBuild to get a very snappy dev experience. Hot module replacement was almost instant. The feedback loop when doing changes felt like magic. Vite was part of a new generation of build tools. Parcel was pioneering zero config with better defaults and also having the index HTMLs as the center of the application. And other projects like Web Dev Server, Snowpack, and WMR from the Preact team shared a lot of ideas with Vite Unbundled Dev Server. This new architecture resonated with a lot of people, and adoption started to pick up for them. It really seemed like the ecosystem was ready for a new build tool based on this architecture, but it wasn't clear what project we will all end up converging to. The Svelte team chose Snowpack for building a SvelteKit. And at that point, it seemed that Snowpack was the one with the most momentum. That started to change on December 2020, when Evan slashed the Vite 1 release and started a massive sprint to improve Vite design based on all the lessons he learned. Inspired by WMR Universal Rollup plugin interface, Vite 2 will allow to write plugins with hooks that work it both in build and dev in the same way. And this made it easier to move all framework-specific logic out of Vite core and into external plugins. Until then, some of the Vue-specific logic in core had been a showstopper for other frameworks. So this was a very welcome change. During this period, Evan was also building VitePress, a static site generator using Vue and Vite that helped it a lot to dog food the new design and iterate on it. Evan built Vite thinking about what a framework author will need, and that made a huge difference. Framework authors always felt like the tool was built for themselves. Another big feature that Evan added in the Vite 2 sprint was a straightforward SSR API for frameworks to tap into. The dev side of it was inspired by the shim the Svelte team was using with Snowpack, and this will end up being another key feature for adoption. Until then, it was very complex to do a proper SSR setup with other build tools. And now frameworks could get it working in no time with Vite and with a good dev story. On February 2021, Vite 2 was finally officially released, and it completely changed the game. Shortly after it, Evan created the Vite team to help him maintain the project, and at this point, Vite also had a very active community. In particular, I want to mention that a lot of devs from the Chinese community have been building a lot of plugins and contributed to Vite core through the whole story. And here I will mention a lot of people, but it is impossible to mention everyone that has contributed to Vite and the plugin ecosystem and all the related projects. So know that if you have done something, it is extremely appreciated by every user of Vite. The Svelte team reevaluated their decision to use Snowpack after they saw that Vite was now a lot more aligned with their own needs for SvelteKit. Many Svelte members later joined the Vite team, and this has been a tradition, with new framework and tools getting heavily involved in Vite core after adopting Vite. The switch of SvelteKit from Snowpack to Vite sent big waves across the ecosystem. And adoption started to pick up. Chess, for example, used Vite to implement Cypress component testing. On September that year, Anthony Fu joined Nax Lab, helping him continue his amazing work on Vite and the ecosystem. And he went on to build an empire of plugins and tools. I'm sure if you are using Vite, you are using several of his plugins and tools. And on parallel, the Snowpack team had been working on Astro, a new island-based framework built on top of it. By this point, the momentum on Vite side was so strong that they too decided to switch to Vite and focus all their efforts on Astro. Having the Snowpack team helping on Vite core after that was incredible, as they brought a lot of knowledge. By the end of the year, adoption was strong, but there was a massive pain point for users. Vite didn't have a good testing story. Just missed features Vite needed for a proper integration, and there was no appetite to implement them. In a Vite team meeting, Evan said that we may need to build a Vite testing framework ourselves if nothing changes. And Anthony Fu got inspired, grabbed the Vitest npm package, and after the meeting, got a prototype working in less than a day. Some of us from the Vite team and a lot of other developers from the ecosystem joined the efforts to complete the testing framework, and in a couple of months, Vitest was made public. And it was an impressive story of collaboration. And Vitest took the testing world like fire after that. And it really supercharged Vite adoption. With the ecosystem growing, we needed a better way to ensure stability for Vite releases. Dominic Shi led the charge on the creation of Vite ecosystem CI. Using GitHub Actions, it let us run the CI of the main projects in the ecosystem against Vite main or before merging a PR. we could now ensure that everyone was green before we did a release, and work out regressions with other maintainers before they happen. Stability became a staple of Vite moving forward. And this scheme really worked well. And a lot of other projects that has big ecosystem have adopted the same. At the start of 2022, I joined the StackLit team to work full time on the Vite ecosystem. And by this point, we were seeing a very healthy team structure already. And even more when Safi sent his first PR that was adding CSS source map support during dev. That is a very complex feature to implement. And Safi quickly became one of the pillars of Vite core maintenance. And I cannot give a bigger shout out to him for all his work. Adoption continued to rise. Playwright used Vite for component testing too. And a big one, Laravel adopted Vite by default. And 2 years after its inception, Vite reached 1 million npm weekly downloads. But this was just the start. Vite 3 was the first major released by the Vite team. And there were many features and fixes, but the big focus was on making it a very smooth upgrade. And the ecosystem quickly moved to it. The idea moving forward was that all the Vite majors will be released often and also with a smooth upgrade path. A fun fact about Vite 3, it is the release where we switched the default dev server port to 5173. So more adoption kept coming with the Quick team using Vite to power their Quick City framework. And following SvelteKit, they used the Vite CLI instead of building their own, like Astro and Max. They have to do some hacks to make this work, but this will be a scheme that many others will adopt, and making the Vite CLI even more ubiquitous for everybody. Jorn was a very active Vite maintainer, and we were lucky he joined the Astro team to work on Vite core. At one point, he spearheaded an effort to halve the number of open issues in Vite core in just a few months. We went from 800 to 400. It's just amazing. And on October, we held the first VueConf that really showcased how big the Vite ecosystem has grown. A storybook announced on it the first-class support for Vite. Imagine that until then, you needed both Webpack and Vite to run a storybook on Vite projects. Solid Start reached beta not longer after that. And this is starting to show how downstream frameworks and tools were all starting to mature. On November of 22, Nax 3 was released. And this was an incredible feat. They worked a lot to make it build agnostic, but Vite was the default. In the process, they also created a lot of tools that they extracted from Nax and shared it with the ecosystem. Nitro, for example, lets you write your server as runtime agnostic and run it everywhere, and went on to power several frameworks. Then Vite Node powered their dev SSR, and is also the engine that Anthony used to power Vitest. And later on, it will also play a crucial role in Vite's API evolution. And also Unplugin and a lot more in the AnJS org. A big shout out to the Nax team by the way they share all these pieces with everybody. With Vite 4, we kept releasing Vite majors with a focus on polishing the original design. Vite was being used in larger enterprise apps, and bottlenecks starting to appear. Arnaud built plugin React SWC using SWC instead of Babel that make a big difference, but more will be needed soon. In Vue.js Amsterdam, 10 members of the Vite team met for the first time. That it was great, and there, Vladimir, one of the main maintainers of Vitesse, joined the Vite team. And he started working to move Vite Node from Vitesse as a core feature of Vite. And the speed side of this story was starting to heat up a lot. More build tools written in native language appear, like TurboPack and RSPack, both Rust-based alternatives to Webpack. And Vite was going to need to improve its performance story. The Parcel team created Lighting CSS, a Rust-based alternative to PostCSS, where we use these new tools to speed up Vite. Lighting CSS is a good example that got added as opt-in later on. We worked a lot on performance at this stage, and Vite incrementally improved, but it was now clear that we were hitting the limits of Vite's original design. Still, more frameworks kept adopting Vite. There was a lot of momentum, like Marco with Marco Run, Angular that used Vite for their dev server, and Redwood that further solidified the React and Vite story. And we reached the second VueConf. And as we said, the original design of Vite was showing its performance limit, so something needed to be done. And there, Evan announced his plans to fix this. A new team was forming to build Rolldown, a Rust-based alternative to Rollup powered by OXE. And the long-term plan was for Rolldown to replace both Rollup and ESBuild in Vite, simplifying internals and giving Vite native speed, while keeping the same Vite API for everybody in the ecosystem to use. Remix also joined the ecosystem at this point, and they were very surprised by how every other framework was helping them instead of competing when they have any issues. And Vite 5 continued incrementally improving Vite. We got some performance improvement thanks to Rollup starting to use SWC internally to increment their own performance. And this gave a space to the Rolldown team to keep working on Vite long-term future in parallel. And in the third VueConf, Evan once again dropped massive news, unveiling Voice0, a company to create a unified toolchain for JavaScript, with Vite, Vitesse, Rolldown, and OXE as its main pieces. Evan formed a dream team at Voice0. They have been delivering so much already for the ecosystem in a very short time. It is like kudos to all of them because they are amazing developers. And Established also announced it in the conference, Bolt, a prompt-to-app AI tool that generates Vite apps by default. And I mention this because it is really interesting how there was an explosion of Vite adoption in the AI space since then. Later that year, we released Vite 6, the most ambitious major since Vite 2. The story that Vladimir started by porting Vite Node to Vite Core turned it into a redesign of Vite environment handling. Before, you could only have client and SSR as environment and were hard-coded. But with the new environment API, frameworks can define as many environments as they need and configure them to run their modules in other runtimes during dev using the new concept of a module runner. And we added these new APIs in a backward compatible way So the ecosystem could play during the next majors and give us feedback until we stabilize it, because this was really like the biggest API change since the release of Vite 2. Vitest also continue its own impressive adoption story. Storybook, for example, is a heavy user of Vitest browser mode. I want to do a shout out to Vladimir, Ari, and Hiroshi for all their work on Vitest. And yeah, for example, like Vitest coverage support has improved a ton thanks to the work of Ari Perkio. And things kept speeding up. Kevin announced that TS Down was adopted by Voice Zero and will become the foundation for the future Vite lead modes. And just a few months ago, Voice Zero announced the beta of Rolldown Vite, a fork of Vite that already replaces Rollup and ESBuild with Rolldown. It is showing incredible speed ups across a lot of very big enterprise applications, and there is a lot of work to ensure compatibility with the whole ecosystem ongoing. I want to say that it's just amazing what Voice Zero has achieved in such a short time. Then the first stable version of OXLint was released, also with amazing performance improvement over ESLint. And a few weeks ago, Vite 7 was released. And this release prepares the ground for when the ecosystem is ready to finally merge Rolldown Vite as the default Vite experience. And there we go. From 0 to 30 million NPM weekly downloads in 5 years. Vite is an incredible story of collaboration between so many community, so many teams, so many people. And Vite is where it is today because all these developers decided to work together on a new shared layer of infrastructure. And the scale of the ecosystem is what then allowed the creation of Voice Zero to take Vite to its next stage. And things are just getting started. Anthony is working on Vite dev tools, Hiroshi on official React Server component support, and there is so much more. Once Rolldown Vite is the default, full bundle dev mode is in the pipeline that will further help with the very large enterprise application. And eventually, Vite Plus will connect all the pieces to create a unified JavaScript toolchain. And something that I want to highlight from this story is that when the ecosystem adopts Vite, they are adopting a set of APIs that are stable through the years. And Vite has been evolving internally to speed up everyone while letting them build on a stable base, and will continue doing so. As we said before, a few years ago, Vite started to allow users to move from PostCSS to Lightning CSS. And for React users, to use SWC instead of Babel in plugin React, with Rollup also adopting SWC later on. And now the biggest step that is coming will be replacing SWC, Rollup, and ESBuild with OXC and Rolldown. And these changes, as we said, will keep coming. With the future full bundle mode for Vite Dev Server, as always, the ecosystem will get again a better build tool under the hood, so each team can keep focusing on innovating. Wrapping up, Vue always had an open and collaborative community. And Vite was bootstrapped with these same values. And we have been doubling down on fostering a collaborative ecosystem where we are all pushing to expand and improve our shared commons. I think it is amazing to see how many of the projects that we talked about have been incubated in the Vue community and are now helping all other frameworks. Just to name a few: Vite, Nitro, Unplugin, Ange.js, Volar. When everyone wins when projects collaborate in this way, and it all ends up benefiting back the Vue community big time. So thanks a lot, and really enjoy the rest of VueConf.